It's a wonderful Friday morning, and you are welcome once again to our Living in the World Digital series. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where in the world you are joining us from. So, American Spaces provides access to current and reliable information about the United States through book collections, internet access, events, and activities for everyone. My name is Estella Hilda Anoman, and I'm the coordinator for American Corner Abugwa, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. The integrity of voting systems all across the world is at the forefront of public concern, and so that is why it's so paramount that we delve into this topic, which is the role of cybersecurity in ensuring fair and transparent elections. So our facilitator is Derek Brown, and he's a seasoned professional with a Bachelor of Science in Information Technology from the University of Ghana. His credentials include a Certified Ethical Hacker certification from the EC Council and an EGPT certification from e-learning security. He has 2 years of experience as a former instructor at Coding Dojo and 5 years as a short course instructor in the computer science department at the University of Ghana. So whether you're a cybersecurity professional, an election official, or a concerned citizen, your participation in this conversation is so vital. So during the session, please type all your comments below and they'll be well addressed. Thank you so much for staying with us. Now over to you, Derek. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Estella, for the quick intro. So welcome, everyone. I am Derek Brown. Give me a second to bring up my slides so we can start shortly. All right, so looks like we are good. So my name is Derek Brown. I'm a certified cybersecurity professional and trainer, as Estella said earlier. Today we'll be looking at the role of cybersecurity in ensuring fair and transparent elections. So we would be looking at a few examples, how cybersecurity helps in this particular scenario, on and on and on. Okay. So our objectives for today is that we would see why cybersecurity matters. We would also look at some cyber threats to ballot box elections. We would look at some case study of cyber attacks, and then some cybersecurity challenges that could occur. After that, we'll look at protecting election infrastructure, then best practices for election officials and voters. So we are doing all of this from the perspective of cybersecurity. Okay. So the importance of the fair and transparent elections. Remember that elections are essential for democratic governance and public trust. It also legitimizes the elected officials and political stability. So in a country that is democratic, where we all know that, okay, this country is practicing democracy, elections is one of the ways is one of the avenues we use to elect new leaders or choose leaders. So every time there's an election and there's no fracas, then we say that, okay, looks like these guys are doing well with their democracy. So in the same way, it's always important that there's an election, and when through the elections, the people are able to choose their leader. That is democracy. The government, the people, all one. So every time there's an election, we use that to choose our leaders, and it also ensures that we have political stability at all times. So at all times, when the people's will is done, we know that the elections is good. So in certain countries, the ballot box system or the ballot box voting system is being used. And with this, we use traditional paper ballots. And after casting your vote, there is also the manual counting and tallying. So you go in there, they give you the paper, however it is, for whatever country you are in. You will use that same method you cast your vote, and when you're done, there will be manual counting. So every single ballot paper will be counted. Then after that, it's tallied in certain cases, once it's tallied locally, it is sent to the central point for this to be tallied. So once the result is tallied, then everyone else knows that, hey, this is what we have. This is our new leader. We are good. Now, there are several types of elections. There's a local government elections. There's a presidential election. There's also the parliamentary one. So all of these things are different types of elections that could take place. So this covers any type of election, right? And irrespective of the type of election, it should be fair and transparent. So today we would mostly be focusing on the ballot box voting system, which it's not the electronic one, but more of the traditional one. So even though we are talking about ballot box system that is using papers and all of that, we all assume that if it's ballot box, then where that cybersecurity comes in. Remember, when you are going to vote in certain countries, you would have to use, and even in the case of Ghana, you would have to use, once they verify you from the voters registration list, where those that are eligible to vote, there will be a list where your identity will be verified and everything. After that, there is a biometric machine that you sort of put your fingerprint. And then once you do that, we pick, it sort of confirms that, okay, this person has come to vote, so you can't come back again to vote because we already have your biometrics. So all of these, so the biometrics is more of a technological system one. After all of this is done, when we count the ballot papers and then we send it to the central place for the final counting, and then later we would have to collate all these results. We would need computers. You can't have humans doing mathematical functions. That would be stressful. It would take a long time. So you'd have to put this into computers or softwares. You put in, I don't know how certain countries do this. So this is a generalized one where you put all those numbers in there, and then the system would calculate the totals, and then you know that, okay, for this particular part of the country, this candidate had this score, this particular part of the country, the candidate had this score, on and on and on and on. So now, after it's counted manually, traditionally, it's been sent to a central place for these manual records to be, records to be tallied, right? So in that same way, where it's being tallied, there will be a computer in the midst of that. Even for the voter registration database, before it was printed on the day of election, there would be a computer in there, because you can't have a database and it's just a paper. You have to have it electronically. If you are doing it for a large number of people, you would have to have that electronically. So that is also very important. So all of this shows that there are certain computing systems in between the process. Maybe the election process would be where the manual and the paper trail comes in, but right after that, every other thing would be done with computers to ease the work that is involved. So that is where cybersecurity comes in, because once we have all these computing systems, the internet comes in, networks come in, computers come in, then we know that we have to find ways to protect it. So cybersecurity would help us protect electoral data and the infrastructure involved, and also would help us prevent cyber threats that could undermine the election process. So that is what we'll be looking at here. How does the ballot box system works, how we can help protect the infrastructures associated with the ballot box system, especially, for example, in the case of Ghana. So Tom Stoppard made a statement, and what he said was that it's not the voting that's democracy, it's the counting. Now, the counting is being done, but after that, there has to be that final collation. So, and that is where the computers come in. And so this is also very, very important to us. So most of the infrastructure we'll be dealing with would have to deal with maybe the voters registration list, and then the counting of the votes, the final displaying of the votes. All of this is very important. So where does cybersecurity come in this particular scenario? Because we are mostly talking about the manual ones. And to start off, we are going to look at how cybersecurity can help protect the voter registration list. So With the voter registration list or the database, whenever we go in to register as voters, your details are being captured. This detail is being placed on a computer. Mostly whatever you do, whatever details are being taken from you, we would have to keep it electronically. We can't put that on paper. That would be very stressful. We can't do that for millions of people. So we would have to take your details and put it in a database. A database is basically a record, right? It's a list of records. So if we have lots of people in there, that becomes a database. We have other specific types of database and what they do, but in simple terms, it's basically records. So if we have records of voters, that becomes our voter registration database. So the people that have registered, when the time comes for them to vote, this database would be printed out so that we can manually verify every single person. Now, remember, the database is mostly electronic. It's not a physical thing. So if it's electronic, cybersecurity, the importance of cybersecurity in such a case, even though it's a ballot box voting system, like in the case of Ghana, it helps to protect, cybersecurity will help protect this voter registration database. It ensures that it's accurate and also the integrity of the voter rolls. The rolls is the same as the registration database. So the integrity in cybersecurity, we have a CIA, especially in information security, where CIA is the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the information system. So confidentiality means that only authorized people should have access to the information at all times. Integrity means that the information should not be tampered with, and it should always stay the same unless authorized people are changing that information through the right medium and with the right permissions. So confidentiality says only authorized people should have access to this information. Integrity says that the information should not be changed by unauthorized personnel. And then availability is where we say that these systems should be available to us at all times. So every time I want to just use my computer, I should be able to have access to it. The information I need should be available. If at any point in time that information I can't access it, then we say that the availability of my computer has been compromised. So in the same way, when we see our integrity here, we are talking about the fact that the information should not be altered by unauthorized people. So because we have this voter registration and it's a database, cybersecurity would help us ensure that that database has not been altered, meaning it's always accurate. At all times, because there is cybersecurity, we can always check it because there are mechanisms in cybersecurity we can use to ensure that that data has not been changed. If the data is changed, the modified date will show that. If it doesn't change, we can sometimes even hash it out and then always compare. Something called the hash is a security mechanism where we always check that to make sure that the information we put in 3 weeks ago, as of today, it's still the same and nothing has changed. So that is one way cybersecurity can help in cases of ballot box elections. And then also, it also helps prevent interference with election infrastructure.
Okay.
So remember, we are talking about the infrastructure area, the computing systems that are involved, the computing system that we would mostly not have access to as voters, but then it's being used by the authorities that are in charge of the election. So we want to cybersecurity helps prevent interference with such election infrastructure. It would make sure that it safeguards the communication that is happening. If the election officials are trying to communicate to the central point, they have to use a form of communication that is secure. They can't just be communicating over unsecure lines. If they have to send whatever record they have, either by email or through an application, all of this should be done through secure channels so that unauthorized people should not be able to intercept that data and see what is going on. So all of this is very important. Then also we want to ensure accurate voter rolls. So this is where we are trying to prevent manipulation and authorized access. So this is very similar to the first one, but then we are adding unauthorized access to it. It could be that the information may be accurate. It could be that the information's integrity has not been compromised, meaning it's not been altered, But however, an unauthorized person could still have access to it. An authorized person could have access to information and they may not change it. The fact that they have access to it, they could decide to download it. They could decide to, let's say, view the content, which might be some confidential information. That process where they have unauthorized access to the information can also be an issue. So unauthorized access has to do with the confidentiality of the system. So we have the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So confidentiality is unauthorized access to the information. So that is what we are looking at here. So even if the information has not been changed, we also have to guard against unauthorized access to that information. And then maintaining public trust in the electoral process. We always have to assure voters that the security of the systems is legit, the fairness of the system is the election systems are legit. In certain cases, I think elections have always had issues here and there, and with such situations, it's always public where sometimes if you are lucky, the authority in charge would come out to say that, oh, we experienced a few attacks here and there, but we were able to curtail them. It did not work. So all these statements let the public know that, oh, we actually almost experienced something, but looks like our guys are good enough to protect the systems. So whenever these cybersecurity mechanisms are in place, it actually boosts the public's trust in the systems that are available, so that even if they hear specific news on the day of the election and everything, they know that, oh, these guys told us that they have this type of security, that type of security in place, so we trust that they'll be good. So cybersecurity also helps maintain that public trust, and people would be able to have confidence in the process that is happening because they know that security mechanisms are in place. So what are some cyber threats that could happen to ballot box elections? So we have phishing attacks, and phishing attacks, as the name suggests, looks like someone going to phishing, but it's not. It's something else. So in cybersecurity, we have a term which is social engineering. And social engineering is an attack where we manipulate people into doing something they would normally not do. So whenever there's that manipulation, someone tricks you to do something you wouldn't do on a normal day. Either they trick you into giving out certain information, clicking on certain links and all of that. That is social engineering. So a type of social engineering is a phishing attack. And a phishing attack is where we are tricking you, but however, we are using emails to trick you. So phishing is where we send you emails that look a specific way, and they make you do certain actions you would normally not do. So, for example, if you check your emails, you're going to see these emails that say, congratulations, you've won this and this and that. Congratulations, this thing you did was successful, even though you know you've not even entered a ballot or anything, which is like a raffle or promotion. But you keep getting these emails telling you, congratulations, you've won. Others will tell you, click here to get your prize. In other cases, you would also get emails that would look like, so the smart ones will send a more personalized emails where you get one that tells you that, hey, we need you to update this information. For example, if they know that you use Gmail, or they can even guess, knowing that a lot of people use Gmail, they can send you an email that looks like it came from Gmail. And then that email is telling you that we are trying to improve our policies, so we need you to go in there and then update your passwords and a few other things. So now it looks very urgent. Sometimes they could even say that we gave you all 20 days to update your email, and now you have only 1 day left to update your email details. So you can either do it now or lose access to your email. So click on this link and then add all the extra information we need. You click on the link, first thing you see would be, for example, the Gmail login. And then when you think you have to log in, so you try to put in your details, and then before you know it, you don't even see anything. You try to log in, it will bring you back to the same page again. What just happened is that what the site you were seeing was probably a fake site. It was, maybe they just faked the URL. Maybe with Gmail, they just added a single extra L to it. So it's Gmail with double L, Gmail with double I. All these are called typo squatting, where attackers would pick a legitimate website's URL or they purchase a domain or URL that looks like a legitimate website, but then it has a typo in it, but they use that to trick people. So you go in there, you click on the link, you try to log in. Apparently, it's not Gmail, it's a fake Gmail. So at that point, your username and password has now gone to the attacker. So in the case of such elections, what happens is that attackers could send certain emails to election officials. Now, with election officials, it could be the candidates that are going to vote. It could be the electoral commission's officials, those that are going to handle the election software. So they are doing this because once you click on any of the links they provide, you may have given them access to your systems, or you've given them access to a portion of your personal information. So once they get such information, they could use that information either to blackmail whoever the official is, or they could probably leak that information in the case of specific countries. Even I think in the case of France, we would see that shortly, where they leaked the information they found just to sway voters' confidence and a few other things. So phishing attack is where we send you the email. It could be sent to target election officials, and once it's done, they can use that to blackmail. They can post those personal information on the internet, or they can use that to view some private information that should not be in the public. Then we also have tampering with the voter database that we've just talked about. So in certain cases, we could have where tampering is where it's either the information is being changed or they make that particular database unusable. So when the days when this database is really needed, they could make it hard to have access to it, right? So, and that is very similar to the distributed denial of service. So distributed denial of service attacks on election websites. In distributed denial of service is where the attackers will send so many requests to you to the extent that you can't respond. So let's visualize this. When, let's say you are in a room and then you receive, let's say one person calls your name, hello, right? Let's say my name is Derek. So one person called me and said, Derek, I'll respond and say yes. If two people mention my name, Derek, I would respond yes, right? So I'm responding to them. Now, let's assume the 100 people mention my name. At the same time, I need to respond to 100 people. It would be tedious, but it's doable. Now, in the case where 1,000 people call my name, I'll probably respond like 100 times and I'll be like, I'm tired. You guys, I can't do this anymore. Now, imagine 10,000 people call your name at the same time and you have to respond yes to every single one of them. That is undoable. That is very hard to do. So the denial of service attacks basically is an attack where we send so many packets, or we send so many requests to a legitimate server or website that they can't even respond to. We send illegitimate requests and then now they can't respond to legitimate people. So just like the hello, Derek, and they're responding and all of that. So in the same way with computers, you can actually send a lot of hello to computers, not hello in quotes, but in a way, you send so many hellos to a computer and it will be overwhelmed and it can't even respond to any more requests. So the computer can sometimes give up and say, I'm tired of you guys. I need some time to breathe. And with that, at that point, even when legitimate users want to check something or use the systems, it would not be available. It would just be like, well, I tried, but I'm overwhelmed at this point, so I can't respond to any other requests. I need some time to breathe. So that can be possible when a website is overloaded and all of that. So that is a denial of service. That means it's overloaded to the extent that it can't respond to legitimate requests. Then there is a distributed denial of service attack. So this one with the denial of service mostly comes from one source. So one person is sending all the 1,000 hellos, 10,000 hellos. With the distributed denial of service, they share the load. So in this case, they would probably infect other computers and then they use those computers as zombies to send that hello. Now, in this modern world where we have what we call the Internet of Things, these are mostly every other appliance in your homes that are connected to the internet. So it's not just your computer or your phones, your laptops. Nope. Now it goes beyond that. If your refrigerator has the ability to connect to the Wi-Fi because it's smart, it becomes an Internet of Things. If your microwave can do that, it becomes an Internet of Things. If your TV can do that, it becomes an Internet of Things device, IoT. So in recent years, attackers are able to infect all these devices that we mostly don't think about their security, and then they use them to perform cyber attacks. So in this case, the attacker could be somewhere, they infect all these devices and use those to send lots of requests to the server, maybe the election website on the day of an election. And then in that case, the server will be overwhelmed. So that is where a distributed denial of service attack comes in, because the source of the attack has been distributed across multiple devices to one target. Then there is this one. Now this one is quite solid, which is a disinformation campaign. Now it looks like, oh, this is nothing, because every single person mostly looks at the technological side of things, right? Where it's an attack, it's a distributed denial of service attack. We are tampering with the voter database, unauthorized changes. But then this disinformation campaigns also work so well, because maybe you can't hack into the systems because it's secure. But however, these guys are very sophisticated. They can spread some false information to confuse the voters or even mislead them. So they spread certain information, they make it so popular to the extent that, now remember, the information they are spreading is false, but they make it look so legit. They make sure it's being shown on so many legitimate areas that you know that, oh, this thing could be true. If sometimes when you search for one thing on your computers, you wake up the next day and then you are visiting a normal website and you see an ad on the website based on what you searched for the previous day, right? So imagine you're about to vote and then you start getting all these ads that are related to what you are going to, like your elections that is coming up. Now, you would think that is normal, but apparently what you are receiving is targeted ads that are in relation to your elections. Now, in cases where malicious people want to do something, they could now spread false information using these advertisement campaigns on these sites that we all know and love, like social media sites, and sometimes even general websites. They pay for these ads and then they spread misinformation, and in the end, it can sway the voters' vote, right? It can confuse them. It can also mislead them. So let's move on to look at some cyber attacks that have happened in the past. Now, all these are attacks that have been verified that have occurred in the past. And I think, so we are going to start off with the US elections in 2016. So this is on the FBI's website. And what they said was that in 2016 elections, there were some interference by some Russian attackers, and what happened was that they actually used, when we talked about the phishing and all of that, so they compromised the systems of officials and people that had access to election systems. And what they did was, once they compromised their systems, they stole certain documents for them. They staged the release of these documents in order to interfere with the elections. So this is something that was documented. These people were caught, and they were, yes, what I know is they were caught. Whatever happened after that, I don't have that information. So that is what happened in 2016. And so you know that no matter what happens, these attackers have no boundaries, irrespective of what is happening. They will decide that, okay, we don't care, we want to manipulate this election. So they will try to get into certain systems, try to create some disinformation campaigns against the candidate to make sure that the voters are misled, and then they will vote for whoever these attackers prefer. Then in 2017, in France, in the France election, what happened was that there were phishing campaigns again. Now, these campaigns were targeting candidates, which the people that are actually about to be elected. And the phishing campaign, remember, is the email. So they send these emails to these people, and some of them fell prey to it. So when they fell prey to it, getting close to the election, they leaked some of these emails, private emails of these officials. They leaked it to the public so that the public would be swayed, where they would be like, oh, this happened. So this person, we saw an email of this person and it's so bad that we are not going to vote for them again. So the response that the France Electoral Commission did was that they launched an investigation into the attack to see ways they can mitigate or reduce the impact, because the people have already been hacked. There's nothing you can do. They've been hacked. So the best you can do is you try to help them secure their system so that they are not hacked anymore. Because once they were hacked through phishing campaigns, what happens is that they have already extracted the information they need. They even leaked some of this information online. So the best they could do was that they launched an investigation into what happened, tried to reduce the impact of it. They tried to help secure whatever personnel were attacked. Then they also tried to raise public awareness about misinformation and digital security. So the Electoral Commission used that opportunity to educate the public, for them to know that, hey, this happened, you all know about it, but then know that when you see this information, all these are lies, these are misinformation, know that what happened. So the thing about these things is that you always have to get ahead of the situation and communicate with people and let them know that this and this and this is what happened, and this is what we are doing or we have done to resolve it. So they launched an investigation. They created public awareness. They educated people on digital security and what can be done. So they used the opportunity very well. Now, in 2019, during the Indian elections, there was allegations of electronic voting tampering, machine tampering. Now, these were allegations. These were not things that had happened. So this is also a misinformation tactic. So allegations came out saying that the electronic voting machines have already been tampered and they have already been hacked, so it's not safe, on and on and on and on. So how did the Indian Electoral Commission respond? They implemented strict security measures for the electronic voting machines, first of all, because there's information out there that this thing is not safe, and they know it's safe. So what do? They now added more security just so that people will know that, yes, if you've heard all of this, we want to assure you that it's not true. But even to go a step further, we are going to improve the security we have. Now, this was also a misinformation campaign. Also, they collaborated with social media companies to try to combat the spread of this misinformation. So these are certain major case studies of cyber attacks that have happened on elections. And you notice that even though they were hacking, some hacked, some did not hack, the main goal was misinformation to sway the voters from where they are to a different candidate, okay? And so moving on, we are in Ghana, so obviously we have to come up with an example for Ghana. So in the case of Ghana in 2016, during the 2016 elections, I think certain things almost happened. And so the Electoral Commission posted that they strongly disapprove of any, I think they posted on Twitter in 2016, I think 8th of December, they posted that they strongly disagree with any person that is trying to attack their systems. So that means that they noticed someone was trying, they stopped it, but they also had to post online that, hey, anyone that is trying to do that, we strongly disapprove of what you are doing. More like a public wanting to let you know that they've seen what you're doing, but they are warning you stop. So within that period, I think they stopped posting some updates for a while, just so that they could regroup and make sure all the systems are good before they could continue with what they were doing. So even in our case, we are not exempted from these things. Some people tried, and obviously it wasn't successful, but there was an attempt in recent years. Now, so moving on, what are certain cybersecurity challenges that could occur, especially in the case of if we are going for an election? What are some of the challenges we could have? Remember, we need to secure these electronic systems. So first of all, we have limited resources and funding. So most of the time, if it's a government, if it's an organization, even in organizations, when it comes to security, the main thing here is the budget. So does the organization have enough budget to make sure they have advanced cybersecurity tools and training? All of this is very important. So funding is very, very important. And at times you have to now make a hard decision on what you have to choose or what you have to select. Do you go for security or you go for functionality? Most of the time there's a big conflict between convenience and then security, where I mean, everyone in the IT department always wants security to be 100%, but if you do that, it ruins the convenience of the systems you are trying to create or allow your users to have access to. So you always have to find a balance between convenience and then security so that you don't skew towards one end, because if you skew towards convenience too much too, your security might be too loose. So you have to find a balance. And so sometimes limited budgets can also be an issue. And then we have lack of trained cybersecurity professionals. Now, Ghana has a lot of cybersecurity professionals, and they are all trained. Recently, in the case of Ghana, the Cybersecurity Authority recently came out to say that every single cybersecurity practitioner or organization should register with them so that we have a complete database of all those that are practicing cybersecurity in Ghana, individuals, organizations, which is a very good thing. So that shows that we have a lot of cybersecurity professionals here. However, too much is never too much, right? Enough of something is never too much. So you can always add more, right? You don't just say, oh, because we have, let's say, 5,000 professionals, that is good, or we have 20,000. No, it's always good to improve the number. It's always good. We have a need for skilled personnel that can manage and protect the electoral systems. I believe that in the case of Ghana, we have excellent people that are managing the electronic systems in regards to the elections, but we still need more people, even outside of the elections. This is like a general cybersecurity challenge where a lot of people, I think most people are even now trying to get into cybersecurity because they realize, oh, this is actually a field that is quite interesting. But let's say 20 years ago, most people did not even know that there is a field like that. So there's the need for skilled personnel that could help manage and protect electoral systems, not just now, but then even in the future. So that capacity building is always very important. And then in certain cases, some cybersecurity challenges that could happen would be inadequate infrastructure. So inadequate infrastructure is where we have the systems, but then maybe some of the systems may be outdated. And then also sometimes you could also have poor internet connectivity, especially if you are dealing with locations that are a bit remote. How do you make sure that these locations could still communicate across the internet to send what they need to send over? So inadequate infrastructure also is one of the things. And this cuts across a lot of industries and not even just the election bit of things. And then also one other challenge would be political and social challenges where every now and then, we have the politics that goes on where, I mean, we change governments at all. Every single country changes government. So whatever thing that is happening, we always need to make sure that the political aspect of things is always is streamlined so that it doesn't interfere with whatever mechanisms we are going with in terms of elections. So how do we protect election infrastructure? Now, the first thing we can do is physical security of polling stations, right? If we are dealing with ballot box elections, we have to think about how to protect election infrastructure. And for that, physical security is very important. I know we've talked about electronic. Yes, that's nice. But if you have the best if you have the best digital security and your physical location is not secured, you've literally wasted your time. For example, I'm in my house, and if I have the best of security, I have security cameras and everything, but then my main gate is open, it's not even closed. I don't even lock my main door. What have I done? That means my physical security is terrible. I have cameras, I have motion sensors, all these digital security, but if I don't have that physical security in check, everything is, as we say, cost 90. So we have to secure the polling, there's a word for it, I think the polling stations, in a case where we are doing ballot box elections. Any country that does ballot box election, of which Ghana is also included, we have to make sure physical security is in place. We have to secure the storage and transport of ballot boxes and election materials. The things coming in, these things going out, we also need to find ways to make sure that, I think most countries have that, where the ballot box has the seal to make sure that no one has tampered with it until it's time for the counting. So all of this security is very essential. If you don't have them, anything could happen, right? Then we also need to ensure that we have secure communication channels between election officials, right? If information is being transmitted from one end to the other, I don't think we can carry these ballot boxes from one remote area in Ghana to the other side in a short period of time. So after the counting is done and everything, we generate whatever sheets need to be generated, numbers are being put on it. Now these numbers should be transmitted to the central point where everything is being collated. So when it's being transmitted, we have to use secure communication channels. We can't do this over insecure channels, because if you do it over insecure channels, anyone could intercept what you are communicating. They may intercept it, modify it, and then send it to the final destination. That could be a case of a man in the middle attack. Just like the name says, there would be a man. It doesn't always have to be a man, but the man here is the attacker. So there would be an attacker in the middle of the communication. Whatever you are sending, they intercept it, look at what you are sending, then they can modify what you are sending to what they want, and then they forward it to the destination. So if you don't have enough security, or you don't have good encryption system, you don't have good ways to verify where the information is coming from, because you even have to have digital signatures to verify that the information you are sending came from the right source and you received it. If you don't have all these things in place, then whatever you are doing can be intercepted and manipulated before it gets to the destination. So there should be the use of encrypted communication tools to prevent eavesdropping, people being able to intercept what you are sending. We know eavesdropping has to do with hearing what people are communicating. In computing, we also have eavesdropping, where when someone intercepts the information to see what's there, they've eavesdropped into your digital communication. Also, we need to monitor and respond to cyber threats in real time. This is election infrastructure. So remember the case study I gave where someone tried and the Electoral Commission came out to say, we don't approve of whatever you guys are doing. They just gave out that warning and they stopped. They didn't go any step further, right? And then apparently when that thing happened, there was also a graphic that was being shared on social media saying one candidate had won. So the Electoral Commission, in the case of Ghana, came out to say that this graphic you're seeing, it's not legitimate. It doesn't come from us. This is not the one that we've put out there. And so that graphic that was put out there, wherever it came from, was a form of misinformation, where they were trying to say that, okay, this is what's happening, just to sway public opinion. And then the Electoral Commission had to come in to debunk it and say, nope, we know someone is trying to mess with us. We are dealing with it. But at the same time, this graphic that is being posted all around is not legitimate. It doesn't come from us. Because every time you have to nip these things in the bud initially. Now, in the case of, if it was a cyber threat, they had to have a team that were monitoring. Because in Ghana, I think Ghana is one of the excellent countries when it comes to cybersecurity and all of that. So we have all these things in place. So in other countries that should be doing the same, they need to have what we call a cybersecurity operations center or a security operations center. So this will mostly be a room where they are mostly monitoring. You know, where we have the engine room to monitor the election results, we also have an engine room to monitor cybersecurity events. So these guys are just monitoring, and whenever they see any action that is out of the ordinary, they will just flag it and then they would respond to it immediately it happened. They won't wait for 5 hours after the attack is over. So they have ways of responding to these threats in real time, because if you don't have these teams on standby and you experience a threat, you now need to decide how you are going to respond. And the next step is coordinating with law enforcement agencies. Because if you are coordinating with them and you experience an attack, even with the physical security of your polling stations, because you're already coordinating with the law enforcement agencies, you are able to sort of resolve that. Now, in a case where any of these things are compromised and you are collaborating or coordinating with these law enforcement agencies, you guys will be able to collaborate and investigate what incident it was. Even though you have a cybersecurity operations center internally working on this, you also have to have some collaboration with law enforcement agencies. So what is the role of governments and organizations in this endeavor, right? We are trying to secure the role of cybersecurity in fair and transparent elections. So what is the role of government and organizations? Now, remember, national and local governments, their job is to establish and enforce cybersecurity policies. We don't decide on these policies. They create the policies, we adhere to it. So these policies are very essential. And then also the Electoral Commission of the country that is using the ballot box election, they would be the ones to oversee the implementation of the security measures, right? So in such a case, whatever commission it is, irrespective of the country, they have to make sure that, okay, these policies that I've set up, we have to work on them. We have to implement them so that we have a fair and transparent election. So they also have a responsibility in this regard. And then finally, we have non-governmental organizations and international bodies. These come into play because sometimes they offer an oversight of what's happening to say, okay, I'm monitoring what you guys are doing. This is going well. It's a form of encouragement, right? And then other times too, they provide resources, training to help whatever country it is to go through their elections successfully. Because you always need these international oversight so that when you're doing something good and someone tells you are doing well, it sort of motivates you to do it better. So mostly they help with that monitoring and oversight. Other times too, they offer resources and training. So that is where they come in. So we're going to look at some best practices for election officials, right? So first thing is we have to have regular training on cybersecurity practices. You can't have a situation like this where the officials that are going to be handling the elections, whether on the ground or those that are going to be in the engine room to deal with the computing systems, where they have no idea of what cybersecurity practices and what the latest threats are. If people have been educated on what a phishing attack is, when they see certain emails, they will look out for certain cues to see that this could be an attack. But if they haven't been educated, then they could fall prey to this. So regular training helps because they'll be up to date with the latest threats, the latest defenses, and they would be good. Also, implementing strict access controls. Now, access control is where you limit people's access or you give them only, I don't want to use the word access, but it keeps coming up. But this is where you limit people's permission to certain areas of your systems. So with access control, most of the time we have role-based access control where people are given access to resources based on the roles they hold in the organization. There are other parts as well, but just role-based is always is fine. And so we have to implement strict access control where we limit system access to authorized personnel only. You could be in the organization, but you could also even not have access to some type of data in the organization. So based on your level in the organization, you have access to whatever data they want you to have access to. So access control is very important. Also, regularly updating and patching systems. We have all these softwares we are using across board. It could be proprietary, which is we created them ourselves, or we bought them from third parties. We always need to make sure that these systems are regularly updated and patched. So patching is where you apply a security update to a system. So in case there's a security vulnerability, when you patch it, when you apply the update, you've patched it, right? So all these systems should be kept up to date. And then finally, they have to establish clear protocols for responding to incidents. So we have incident response, which is how you would respond whenever a cybersecurity incident happens. So if, for example, if I'm home and someone is trying to, let's say, break down my door, that is an incident, right? If, let's say, someone is trying to get through my roof, that is also an incident. So in cybersecurity, you have to have a policy or you have to have a plan on how you respond to specific incidents. If they are coming through the door, how do you respond? You have to list that out, the people that have to respond, how they have to respond, the people that have to be communicated with whilst the incident is happening. All these will be in your incident response plan. If the person is coming through the roof, it's also a different type of incident, and I should have a clear protocol on how I would respond to such an incident. So you don't just do a one for all where you just decide, okay, in case our election applications are experiencing this type of attack, let's say if they're experiencing any type of attack, let's go and shut down the system or let's go and unplug them from the internet. That would be terrible. You don't do that. So you have to have clear protocols on how you respond to every single type of incident. And this should be communicated with the team members that would be responsible for responding to such attacks. So what are some best practices for voters? Remember, if you are going to vote and there's a ballot box voting in the case of Ghana, right? There has to be awareness of phishing and social engineering attacks. So this is where you have to be cautious of suspicious emails and messages you receive. Now, remember I told you there was phishing, which is phishing, which is the email side. Now, there is also vision, which is VISH. So vision is where you are getting a message, but it's a voice message. So you get a voice message that is trying to trick you. So there is vision, which has to do with voice. And then finally, there is smishing. So smishing is SMS, right? So smishing is where they are trying to trick you, but they use the SMS, that is smishing. If they use voice, that is vision. And then if they use emails, that is phishing, PH. So it doesn't always have to be emails. It could come across in multiple ways. So we would be wrapping up shortly. So moving on, we have, as voters, you have to verify the authenticity of election-related information. So use official sources for election news and updates. Don't go on social media and just be consuming everything. If you're going to go on social media, go to the hub that contains election software information. Whatever commission that is in charge of the elections, that is where you go for all your updated information. I know sometimes you would have all these news agencies collating their results as well, but the only people that have the final results will be the Electoral Commission of the country. So that is where you should get all your information from. And then whenever you see any suspicious activities, report any irregularities. You see someone doing something irregular, you report it. You don't just look and say, I'm not going to do that. No, you report it. Because if the country is going to be good, or if everything is going to be fair and transparent, it starts with you. And then you always have to try to protect your personal information. So safeguard your personal details so that you can prevent identity theft. You don't want someone using your identity for something they are not supposed to. So what are some future threats that could happen in election security? So these are things we could do as we move on. These are things we could do to improve our security in terms of elections. So increasing adoption of advanced technologies. In this right now, we have AI just buzzing every now and then. So we can integrate AI and machine learning for threat detection. Now, in the case of Ghana, the head of the Cybersecurity Authority, the head of Cybersecurity Authority recently had a program, and he made a statement that he is going to collaborate with the major social media websites to combat misinformation. So you see misinformation again. So they're going to collaborate with these social media websites to combat misinformation. And also they are going to use AI tools in order to help combat some of these attacks. So that shows us that we are not just using AI for just basic things, but we are also using it to combat misinformation. And that shows how advanced Ghana is in terms of combating some of these things. And then also greater international cooperation and standardization. With this, we are collaborating with the best. And then also enhanced focus on security, on securing the entire election ecosystem. So with this, we are protecting all aspects of the election process, not just the voting part, but the database before the election, and then what happens after the election. And then finally, ongoing public education and awareness campaigns. This is self-explanatory. You can't do an election without educating the public on what they should know and what they should not know. So in conclusion, we are in a digital world. We can't ignore what's happening. So cybersecurity is essential to having a fair, transparent, and credible election. And whilst we are doing that, we should have security measures in place that could help protect these systems. And then collaboration and taking proactive steps is always important. You don't wait to be attacked before you protect yourself, but then you always get ahead of the attacks. You try to put security measures in place so that you don't fall victim to some of these attacks. So this brings us to the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for being around. I'm going to hand over to Estella. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Derek. Thank you for this amazing insights you've shared with us. We just have some few minutes before we wrap up. Officially, thank you for, this conversation is very crucial. It's very insightful for us to know the role that the government has to play in this, in ensuring, security in terms of election processes, as well as the part where the voters, and their role and the best practices that we can also do on our part to ensure that we have fair elections. And so I want to thank you once again, Derek, for taking us through this session. I also want to thank our audience for also being part of it. We hope that you picked a thing or two that can help you in the upcoming elections, that you can take a stand, you can take a place in that role, in knowing even how to consume information online as well. So before we end today's program, I want you to know more about an amazing online resource that is the eLibrary USA. Is the state-of-the-art digital library with 9 premium electronic databases that include digital newspapers, magazines, journals, videos, and dissertations. Usually this resource is only available to use in person at our American spaces, but with the global pandemic, we are opening up access to this amazing resource. And if you are interested, you can sign up using the link that can be found in the comment section below. And so, this information is very important, so you can share it with your colleagues, with your friends, so that they can also learn from all the insight that we've gained from this session. And this program is proudly brought to you by the U.S. Embassy, American Corner, Abuba, in partnership with Mobile Web Ghana. And this is part of our digital series. So till we come your way again, have a happy weekend. Thank you.